8. The Philadelphia Experiment. A popular urban legend claims that on October 28, 1943, a ship called the USS Eldridge teleported from Philadelphia to Norfolk, Virginia, and then back to Philadelphia. According to the story, this was done as part of a top-secret government operation called the Philadelphia Experiment. Different versions of the story went viral online. One description stated that the experiment was based on something called unified field theory, which aimed to manipulate the gravitational and electromagnetic fields of the ship to create a cloaking effect that enabled it to travel through space and time unnoticed. Stories claim that the ship's crew suffered a variety of unpleasant side effects from the experiment, including nausea, burns, disorientation, and even spontaneous combustion. But the experiment never happened. It's purely a myth that's been perpetuated by internet users for years and will likely continue to circulate for many years to come. As things currently stand, teleportation's not possible. Science is nowhere near capable of it, and there's a good chance that it never will be. In one study conducted at the University of Leicester, researchers concluded that it would take far more bandwidth and data than we realistically have today, let alone during the 1940s. 7. Mantell UFO Incident. One of the most popular early UFO incidents happened on January 7, 1948, when a 25-year-old Kentucky National Air Guard pilot named Captain Thomas F. Mantell crashed while in pursuit of an unidentified flying object. His fighter aircraft landed on a farm in Kentucky near the Tennessee border. Reports describe the object in question as a circular object measuring 250 to 300 feet in diameter. In addition to receiving civilian reports, at least 3 military members at Fort Knox observed the strange vehicle themselves before dispatching Mantell and several others in pursuit of it. The object was also seen from other military bases in Ohio and Kentucky. One account described the object as having the appearance of a flaming red cone trailing a gaseous green mist. Another stated that the vehicle in question remained stationary for anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes. According to one observer, it came close to the ground, where it stayed for about 10 seconds before climbing at a very fast rate back to its original altitude of around 10,000 feet. The object traveled at an estimated speed of at least 500 miles per hour before disappearing into the clouds. To this day, the events leading up to Mantell's crash are unclear, but it is known that he continued to climb even after the pursuit was called off and the other pilots near him had returned to base. The Air Force concluded that Mantell blacked out from a lack of oxygen, a condition known as hypoxia, causing his plane to spiral toward the ground. He was also inexperienced with the type of aircraft he was flying, which may have contributed to the accident. Rumors claim that Mantell was shot down by a Soviet missile or a UFO, but the military has consistently denied that this is the case. An Air Force investigation concluded that Mantell may have died chasing a high-altitude balloon called a skyhook balloon, which were used in a top-secret experiment that the pilot would not have known about. According to historian David M. Jacobs, the Mantell incident marked a turning point in the public's perception of UFO phenomena, which until then had largely been considered what might be called fake news today. 6. Majestic 12. During the 1980s, a collection of documents surfaced claiming the existence of a clandestine organization of scientists, military leaders, and government officials. Known as Majestic 12 or MJ-12, the alleged secret committee was reportedly formed in 1947 under an executive order issued by President Harry Truman. UFO enthusiasts are often quick to believe that the US government is more involved in extraterrestrial studies than it tends to admit, but most were not fooled by the documents, which the FBI dismissed as completely bogus. Of course, many conspiracy theorists latched onto the idea that Majestic 12 exists, and some even continue to do so today. Some reports claim that the Majestic 12 documents surfaced as early as 1982, while the Government Accountability Office noted that several federal agencies had received reports alleging the existence of the organization during the late 1980s. In a 1995 report, the GAO stated that these agencies responded to requests for comment about Majestic 12 by stating that all claims of the organization came from non-governmental sources. Simply put, it appeared as though stories of the agency came from purely civilian sources, and that there was no evidence to suggest that Majestic 12 actually exists. The GAO also concluded that there was no reason to treat the Majestic 12 claims or various government agencies' responses to it as classified material. In its investigation, the GAO determined that there was nothing to suggest any contradictions between its findings and how the matter was handled by other organizations. In other words, Majestic 12 does not and never did exist, according to every US government agency, and there's no evidence to indicate that it's somehow being covered up at the highest levels of intelligence. The Majestic 12 case is the perfect example of how pervasive rumors can become despite having no solid backing. And as I mentioned before, while many people were quick to realize that there was no reason to believe Majestic 12 was real, some clung to the idea that it was, so much so that they found ways to continue believing in it even after all signs pointed toward it being a hoax. Almost everyone would agree with the saying that people often tend to believe what they want to believe in. Have you ever been convinced of something that you later realized was most likely not true? What caused you to take a step back and look at it from a different angle? Tell us about it in the comments below, but be sure to subscribe first. 5. The Roswell Incident. While driving on their property, roughly 80 miles northwest of the infamous Roswell Army Airfield in June of 1947, a rancher named W.W. McBrazel saw something he didn't recognize. He later described it as a large area of bright wreckage made up of rubber strips, tinfoil, and rather tough paper and sticks. The debris also consisted of lightweight metallic fabric that had become torn and shredded during the bizarre vehicle's collision with the ground. Brazel collected what he could of the wreckage, drove down to Roswell, and handed it over to Sheriff Wilcox, who was equally perplexed by what he saw. Wilcox contacted a commander at the Roswell base named Colonel Butch Blanchard, who was also confused by the materials. This pattern continued up the chain of command until it reached military and government personnel who were high-ranking enough to know what was really going on. Meanwhile, the Air Force announced that a flying saucer had been discovered, sparking a UFO craze and decades of conspiracy theories that continue to circulate today. But this was a lie that was told to cover up the real nature of a top-secret operation called Project Mogul. The vehicle was not a flying saucer, but a high-altitude weather balloon. Its purpose was to detect sound waves generated by Soviet atomic bomb tests. And at a time when Cold War tensions between the US and the Soviet Union were just starting to heat up, telling the American population that it was a UFO was deemed the better alternative to admitting that it was a nuclear surveillance device. The device did not even slightly resemble a typical weather balloon, so people had no trouble running with the idea that it was extraterrestrial in nature. And these beliefs continue to run deep among believers, despite the balloon being definitively traced to Project Mogul. 4. Frank Scully's alien claims. Frank Scully was a well-liked and trusted columnist for Variety magazine. So when he published articles claiming that the government was seen retrieving the bodies of extraterrestrials from a UFO crash in 1949, a lot of people were quick to believe it. Scully claimed that his source was a scientist who was involved in the recovery. And he really believed this, so he continued his investigation, and in 1950 he published an entire book on the matter called Behind the Flying Saucers. The book claimed that at least 2 such alien recovery incidents had occurred during the late 1940s, one in Arizona and one in Mexico. According to Scully's claims, the New Mexico incident involved a flying saucer measuring 100 feet in diameter. Even Time magazine got on board with these stories about space vehicles filled with humanoid occupants, albeit with a healthy dose of skepticism. It was eventually revealed that Scully was victimized by seasoned fraudsters. The hoax was revealed in 2 articles that were published in True magazine in 1952 and 1956. Written by San Francisco Chronicle reporter John Philip Kahn, the articles identified Scully's sources, known as Newton and Dr. Gee, as oil con artists who managed to fool the experienced reporter. Scully apparently clung to the idea that there was some truth to the hoax, however, as evidenced by his claims of flying saucer crashes and dead aliens in his 1963 book In Armor Bright. 3. Project Sign. One of the US government's first UFO investigations was Project Sign. Undertaken by the Army Air Force, the study was conceived in 1947 and was active for most of 1948. Its goal was to collect, evaluate, and distribute information within the government about UFO sightings and any national security risks they might pose. A 1949 public report detailing the project's findings stated that some of the reported sightings appeared to be actual aircraft, but that there was not enough information available to determine their origin. And while nearly all the cases were attributed to ordinary causes, the report recommended that the government continue to investigate UFO sightings. In his 1956 book, The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects, retired Air Force Captain Edward J. Ruppelt claimed that Project Sign had endorsed an interplanetary explanation for UFOs, but that Air Force Chief of Staff General Hoyt Vandenberg shut the project down due to a lack of proof. But this alleged report has never been corroborated, and Ruppelt's claim is widely regarded as more rooted in mythology than reality. Project Sign was the precursor to two more Cold War-era military studies called Project Grudge and Project Blue Book, which you'll also learn about in today's video. 2. Project Grudge. After serving as the scientific advisor for Project Sign, American astronomer J. Allen Hynek oversaw a short-lived study called Project Grudge. Undertaken by the US Air Force starting in early 1949, its purpose was to alleviate the growing fears among Americans about the increased UFO sightings that had been reported in recent years. People were also starting to worry that the bizarre objects being seen in the sky were the product of Soviet technological developments. The government's solution to this public anxiety was to convince the population that UFOs were ordinary objects and phenomena, including weather balloons, conventional aircraft, planets, meteors, optical illusions, solar reflections, and in some cases, large hailstones. Pulling this off was tricky because the level of interest the Air Force was showing in UFOs suggested to the public that they might be real, and it only further contributed to what has been described as a war hysteria atmosphere. Consequently, Project Grudge lasted for less than a year before it was formally terminated in December 1949. In the only formal report that was issued, the Air Force claimed that there was no evidence to suggest that UFOs were the product of an advanced scientific foreign development, and that they therefore posed no national security threats. The report further blamed UFO sightings on the misinterpretation of various conventional objects, a mild form of mass hysteria and war nerves, individuals who fabricate such reports to perpetrate a hoax or to seek publicity, and pathological persons. In other words, the military claimed that people who claimed to see UFOs were mistaking everyday objects for extraterrestrial vehicles, latching onto public anxiety, a liar, or crazy. Project Grudge also concluded that a foreign power might exploit reported sightings as a way to induce fear among the public. 1. Project Blue Book. Not long after the US government went out of its way to discredit any and all UFO sightings via Project Grudge, it embarked on yet another top-secret UFO study, codenamed Project Blue Book. Once again carried out by the US Air Force and under the advisement of astronomer J. Allen Hynek, the project began in 1952 and continued until 1969. Like the two projects that preceded it, its purpose was to establish if UFOs were a national security threat and to scientifically analyze UFO-related data. Project Blue Book collected and analyzed 12,618 UFO reports before ultimately concluding that most sightings could be explained by ordinary objects and phenomena. It was the same conclusion that Project Grudge had come to years earlier. According to the National Reconnaissance Office, a number of the reported sightings were actually flights being carried out by formerly secret reconnaissance planes. A little over 700 of the reports collected and analyzed during Project Blue Book remained officially unexplained at the end of the study. This was just a small number, yet of course people chose to focus on these cases as a disturbing example that UFOs are real, The reports have since become declassified, although names and certain other details have been redacted, making them available for those who want to read them and draw their own conclusions. Thanks for watching. Which one of these conspiracies do you believe in most? Let us know in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.